And we're back with another team prediction preview and profile. God, these are the best. I love talking about each team. We actually get to highlight things about teams that we might not normally talk about. And today we're kicking it from the 2 and 3 spot in the National League East last year. We're going to kick it off with the Philadelphia Phillies. How we doing today, boys?
Doing good. This is a team I am waiting to talk about. Stevs, how are you doing?
Definitely gonna be better than the Marlins this year. If you missed our Marlins projection, we posted that on I believe Tuesday, so go check that out before you watch the rest of this episode.
Yeah, so Phillies last year, I think they kind of did exactly what we expected them to do if they actually made the postseason, and they snuck into the wild card spot, and they made it to the World Series. Bryce Harper had his legendary postseason run. Aaron Nola had a top 5 Cy Young season, as he should, one of the best pitchers in baseball. And Nick Castellanos didn't produce a single thing. Like he was bad. And Tom, can you talk us? Oh, Stev, sorry, we don't need a repeat of
Yes.
the Marlins episode.
Hey,
Stev, can
All
you talk
right.
us through the offseason moves?
So let's talk about all the people that they ended up losing. So they lost Zach Eflin, Kyle Gibson, David Robertson, Noah Syndergaard, Corey Knable, Brad Hand, and Gene Segura. And then they sent
Oh,
Matt.
Gene. We talked about Gene
And then
though.
they sent Matt Vierling, Nick Maton, and Donnie Sands to Detroit in exchange for Gregory Soto and Cody Clemens. So that was their big trade this offseason. Definitely a good trade. They picked up Aaron Nola's club option. And then obviously their major signing this offseason was Trey Turner to a monster 11-year, $300 million contract. They went out, signed some arms and Matt Stram, Taiwan Walker, and Craig Kimbrell. And then they went and got Josh Harrison as kind of a depth piece.
All right, Tom. Biggest loss.
what?
Biggest loss. Like out. Bye
Oh,
bye.
oh, their biggest loss. I mean, so there's a couple guys on the list, obviously, but I think Matt Vierling will become a good player in Detroit. I think there's a lot of upside in this guy, and I think they gave him away for Gregory Soto. Obviously, that's gonna be a good move. They needed to aid the bullpen, but I think Matt Vierling is a player with a lot of upside that will succeed in Detroit.
Fair enough. Stev, what stands out to you here?
I mean, from established players, I mean, I think it's got to be Gene Segura, but then you go out and you sign a guy like Trey Turner and Josh Harrison is kind of a depth piece, and that kind of makes up for it by a lot.
I don't
I
know,
feel like
I
the
man.
think
scales are pretty balanced. You
Yeah,
got Gene, you got Trey Turner. One you
I
have
feel
to
like
pay.
I
yeah,
mean Gene
You're paying
Segura
one
has
18
has
million. You're
cake,
paying
so
one 300 million. Like, let's be honest here.
yeah.
but I definitely agree with Tom's Matt Vierling point. I also think Nick Maton is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, that's fair. The biggest one that stood out to me was David Robertson. Quality reliever, established for a while. He did have to get paid a considerable chunk of change to go to the Mets, which you might hear about in a little bit. You will, because we're talking about them today as well. Unsurprisingly, they picked up Aaron Nola's club option, and I think they're going to try and you have to do everything you can to extend him during the season. Um, I mean, yeah, I think they overpaid Taiwan Walker 4 years, 72 million. It's a little bit of cheese for someone who isn't that great.
He was
I mean,
definitely he was
yeah, and
rocky.
he fits in that rotation as a number four guy. It's what you expect in a number four spot. He's very consistent. He's not consistently great, but he's there. You know, he's Taiwan Walker.
I mean, on Fangraphs, he's their starting pitcher 3.
Yeah. Um, I might have made an amendment to that when I put our
That
rotation
that's
down.
fair, but
Yeah. Um, and they picked up Craig Kimbrell for $10 million. I don't understand this one. Having been through the Craig Kimbrell experience last year, like first we had Jansen in LA and then Craig Kimbrell, and I missed Kenley Jansen dearly. Uh, Craig Kimbrell, he got 10 million solely on his name.
that's fair.
Yeah,
He wasn't good last year. Pretty much by any stretch of the imagination, he wasn't good last year.
I mean, I think in Philadelphia he'll have kind of more opportunities and less pressure, so maybe that'll help him in some way. But he's definitely not going to be the closer. They got Jose Alvarado and they went out and got Gregory Soto, so he's definitely not their end all be all closer, but he is definitely going to be a integral part in this bullpen.
I mean, I think we're forgetting their biggest weapon of Sir Anthony Dominguez. But
That's fair.
I kind of like how they utilize, like how any team utilizes their best bullpen arms besides the Padres in the postseason, is they just deploy them at the highest point, like the most important point of the game. I kind of hope that they use Serenity Dominguez like that this coming year. I think it'd be really beneficial to them. So on top of Dominguez, Alvarado, Kimbrel, Soto, they've also got Andrew Bellotti, Matt Stram, which Steves just mentioned they signed, Connor Brogdon, and Nick Nelson. It's a As far as Philly bullpens go, it's really not that bad. And like overall bullpens, it's really not that bad. It's a very like upper middle of the pack. I'd probably put it 10 to 15 in the league.
I definitely agree. There's a lot of depth in here, and it kind of drops off a little bit, but it's definitely a well-rounded bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, you got two lefty weapons in the bullpen that are both at that elite level. I mean, Jose Alvarado and Gregory Soto are both elite relievers, not like top of the pack, but they are both above average, well above average, and they're left-handers, which is very useful in a bullpen like this.
I think they produced the most 100-mile-an-hour fastballs of all left-handers in baseball, and now they're in the same bullpen. And I think that's actually going to benefit Matt Stram even better because it's going to give him a very different look from the left side. Say you get sixth inning of Gregory Soto and seventh inning of Matt Stram, like it's a very different look.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a lot of deception in the bullpen, and I think that might make them even better this season.
Yeah, I want to see how Matt Stram did last year. I think he was in Boston. And I feel like last year, we're going to talk about Boston for one very quick second. Everything that happened there just disappeared into the void. Anyways, I think that he in Philadelphia could really benefit. He kind of fits into their whole horizontal movement type team. So maybe he'll benefit, and hopefully the infield defense isn't horrible. We've also a thing with the Phillies last year that we joked that they would form one of the worst defenses of all time. And I don't actually think it ended up being the worst defense in the league, in all honesty. I might be wrong about that, but
I mean, they made the move to get Brandon Marsh. That boosted their offense. I mean, their defense like ever so slightly. I think that raised them above last place. Maybe they're still very bad though in the field. I think there's a lot of improvement that
they
has to
were
be made.
ranked 29th.
Yep,
Oh,
that's what I said. They were moved at one.
Who was 30th?
The Washington Nationals.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Phillies defense might have gotten a little bit better this offseason. Tom, what's that lineup going to look like every day?
All right, so batting first, Trey Turner. That is a pretty nice leadoff bat in the lineup. I know, Stebbs, you're smiling. You're gonna have to face him a couple times though. Batting second, Kyle Schwarber, power bat. He's an anomaly, man. He's going to hit nukes though. Number three, Rhys Hoskins at first base, another power bat. There's so many power bats in this lineup. Number four, we got JT Realmuto, one of the best catchers, the best catcher in baseball as of right now. Batting fifth is Nick Castellanos, who is looking to have a bounce back season. Obviously, one of the best hit tools in baseball in the past couple seasons before last. We're hoping he bounces back. Batting sixth, it would be Bryce Harper, but for the first half of the season, it's going to be Derek Hall.
Harper would probably slot in to
like four.
Harper would be earlier, but he will be. He's going to come back as the DH. I think is more
most likely. Yeah,
I think Harper will probably hit like fourth. Realmuto goes to third, and Hoskins maybe fifth.
Yeah. I think Hoskins
you also have to see Rhys Hoskins to Nick Castellanos. If Castellanos can have a bounce back year and Rhys Hoskins kind of flames out like the streaky hitter that he is, then
fair enough.
All right, moving on to number 7 in the lineup, we got Alec Boehm, who I really think will become will have an offensive breakout this season. He's already had an offensive breakout. I think he will break out even further. I think he's got a lot of upside. Batting eighth, Bryson Stott, really big prospect, finally coming up. Well, he's been up, but he's going to show that he deserves to be up. And then batting ninth, Brandon Marsh, who seemingly turned it around last season when he got moved to the Phillies. That's the leaving Anaheim effect, I guess. But he really broke out offensively in that second half of the season. The bench is a little bit lackluster in Garrett Stubbs, Josh Harrison, Edmundo Sosa, and Dalton Guthrie. Is Edmundo Sosa the guy who threw the ball?
Spinning throw and just dome the umpire.
Yeah. That's the only reason I know his name. But
I was writing that down on the sheet, and I was like, he's definitely the guy that just spun around and domed the umpire.
Yeah.
That's why he's a Philly now. He fits into that defense.
Yeah. I'm not sure how I feel about this depth on the bench. If one of these guys get injured, I don't know who's going to replace them. You know, the bench is below average, I would say.
That's how I also feel about their starting rotation. Like it's Nola Wheeler, that's great. Ranger Suarez can be pretty good. Taiwan Walker, they're paying him to be a 3 or 4, and then Bailey Falter.
Bailey Falter is
What
like
happens? What happens if he falters? Um, sorry. Um,
you gotta think they might call it Micah Bell midway through the season, right? You think they might
uh,
make the move?
I don't know if it's gonna be Micah Bell or Andrew Painter.
Painter's so young. I mean, has he crossed double A yet?
He dominated in Double A at the end of
Okay,
last
yeah.
year.
I would love to see Painter in the pros, but I think Micah Bell is a little bit more pro ready just because he's been in the higher minors for a little longer.
Yeah,
But someone's gonna have to replace that starting pitcher five. Bailey Falter is going to falter eventually, so I think that number 5 spot is going to be open for those young guys.
yeah. I'm fine. Micah Bell's only been in the minor leagues for 2 years. He's also 21.
Is he really?
Uh,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Last year he didn't pitch great in single A. He actually pitched better in double A, but he only had 23 game sample size. So I think him and Painter will probably be teammates to start the year, if not Painter starting in triple A. With the Phillies rotation right now, like we know Aaron Nola is very, very good. He's also entering a contract year. Uh, Potential spoiler, I might have him in my Cy Young conversation. Love me some Aaron Nola. Zach Wheeler is just a question of health. In all honesty, if he's healthy, he's very, very good. Top 10 pitcher in baseball in my eyes, if he's healthy. We had this conversation, Tom. And Ranger Suarez actually like looked elite in the postseason. He's a great defensive pitcher. It's just, can he do it again? Like, and can he improve on his margins from 2022?
I mean, in a guy like Ranger Suarez, you don't really need him to like improve drastically. I think he's kind of been pretty consistent throughout the last 2 seasons. I know 2 seasons ago was a little bit better than last season, but even then, last season was pretty good for him. And you need a good lefty in your rotation. Obviously, 2021 was incredible though. I think that was one of the best seasons. Well, that was his best season by far.
Mm.
But all he has to do is he doesn't have to replicate that. He has to replicate what he did last season. He needs to fill the role of a starting pitcher 3.
Yeah. I mean, any improvement for the Phillies would be good. Let's not ignore that. And I do agree though. Like one of those guys gets hurt, the starting pitchers, it goes to Bailey Falter, Andrew Painter, Micah Bell, which might not be bad. It is just like you might want to have a proven guy in your bullpen that can come in, throw 4 innings if needed.
It might be a blessing in disguise to get one of the young guys up, but
Yeah.
I think health is the number one priority for him.
Yeah. And like the reason we're so high on Andrew Painter, like he's 19 and he's sitting 96 to 98 and topping 100. And from what he did in 2022, he can go 6 innings and he doesn't dip below 95 miles an hour. That's pretty good. That's pretty good in my eyes. 70 grade fastball with good command. The only like red flag that people have seen is like when he releases the fastball, it's coming from such a high release point that you can kind of tell when the breaking ball is coming out of his hand, making it a bit easier to spit on or sit on. As we saw in spring training, Kyle Schwarber hit one of his breaking balls onto the freeway. So maybe there's some polishing that needs to do there, but then again, he is 19 years old.
Yep.
So is there anything you wanted to talk about with the Phillies?
I mean, I think you guys have pretty much covered everything. I think for as far as like, because a lot in the last episode we talked about the Marlins, they really kind of needed a couple like breakouts. I think you really need Nick Castellanos to come back and be some semblance of 2021. He needs to at least, hit home runs and hit the ball at a high clip, and he was not doing that last year. I think they kind of figured out his defensive woes or made them a little more manageable, trying to get him to go to his glove side a little more than to his offhand. But I think definitely you need some semblance of a better year from Nick Castellanos in 2023.
Yeah, there is just nothing there is nothing good about his season last year. And that's being generous. Like he was one of the worst hitters in all of baseball. And his fielding, just pulling it up, negative 10 outs above average. That's more outs below average. It's a significant amount of outs below average. He's in the second percentile. He's slow. Actually, he's not slow. That's it. He doesn't have a good arm. He whiffed a ton. He had a really high chase rate, and it was just a huge regression. Then again, he did leave not Citizens Bank. He went to Citizens Bank. He left Great American, and obviously it's a hitter-friendly ballpark. But even then, even when he was in Detroit, even when he was in Chicago, like he was still a very good hitter. So maybe it's just an adjustment.
I think that's what it is. I think it'll take it was a year as an adjustment. How do you play in the playoffs? Was he any significantly better in
He
the
had
playoffs,
one
or was
hit
he
against
just
the Braves. I think that might have actually been his only hit.
He
Okay.
actually did like save the entire World Series defensively, but other than that, which is actually ironic because you bought him out for his bat, but he saved you in the playoffs with his glove. Um, I don't doubt that Nick Castellanos will be back. This is a guy for his career who has always been in the 90th or above percentile for nearly every hitting stat. He's one of the best like pure hitters we've seen in the last couple of years. Um, he's kind of like a hobby bias type guy, strikes out a ton, doesn't walk a lot, but has a good hit tool. And that might be the reason he's burning out right now, is because if he's not relying on his hit tool, he cannot walk and he strikes out a ton. He's not getting on base. But I think he has potential. I think he's gonna come back. He's not that old. How old is he? Like 30 something? He
31.
is 30. Yeah,
He's
so
gonna
he's going to be all right. He's gonna come back next year. He has the tools. He just has to work on his plate discipline. He has a very immature approach at the plate for a 30-year-old.
Yeah, he does have a good interview though. Um, Stez, can you kick us off with our predictions and everything?
So I had a little bit trouble coming up with a breakout for this. So when I get there, I'll probably kind of flip flop back and forth between the two guys that I had. But standings wise, third in the East, 90-72 record. Couple, that's like 3 wins more than they had last year. MVP, obviously I went with I think it would be Bryce, but again, he's not going to be back until about the All-Star break, and he's only going to be their DH until at best probably the postseason. But I went with Trey Turner. He's kind of going to be their focal point. He's their star in the field and on the batting side of the ball until Bryce does come back. Cy Young, obviously, we've talked about him a bunch. Aaron Nola. I like Nola better than Wheeler. He checks all the boxes that you want. He's in a contract year, and that's really only going to elevate. There's one of two ways you can look at it. He's either going to elevate his performance or drop off a cliff. But Aaron Nola will most likely elevate his performance. Breakout players, for me, it was either Alec Bohm or Bryson Stott. Bohm, it would just be more of a defensive improvement or breakout. If he gets to about league average defense or maybe a clip under, he was -9 outs above average last year, so maybe like -2 to 1. That would be extremely like a quote unquote breakout for him. But I ended up going with Bryson Stott. He's young, really has no pressure on him in this lineup. I think he'll definitely take that opportunity and just kind of go. He'll just kind of go and keep performing at a high level. And the most important, I went just kind of with their bullpen. You went out, you got guys like Gregory Soto, Craig Kimbrell, guys that we've talked about. And they also have their established pieces in Jose Alvarado and Sir Anthony Dominguez. I think having them all come together and being a coherent bullpen is very necessary.
I'm almost right with you with all of
Yeah,
them. Brad, go ahead.
same.
Yeah, I mean, like, so like we on this podcast, we like having hot takes. You like being out there, you like being right about these things, you like being different. But the Phillies are pretty obvious for most of these things. I had the exact same projected record. I had the exact same MVP. For most important player, I had Bryce Harper upon return, just because when Bryce Harper's playing on the Phillies are so much better. And that's pretty obvious. Cy Young, same thing. Aaron Nola. My breakout, instead of being between Alec Bohm and Bryson Stott, was between Alec Bohm and Brendan Marsh. I think Brendan Marsh will have a breakout next year. You saw when he got traded. I can look at his splits right now,
It was
actually.
good.
It was very good when he got moved. And you already know he's established himself as a really good defender in the outfield. So if he can just get even an ounce of hitting in him, he will be a star on this team. And I don't think he's going to be one of the biggest difference makers offensively, because there are so many offensive difference makers in this lineup. But I think if he can at least get somewhere offensively, he will be that breakout player for him.
Interesting. So I was a little bit lower on the record. I literally have him with the exact same record as last year, 87-75. I think that there's just an ounce of failure to this team. It's the Phillies after all. The bullpen can regress. The starting rotation cannot have depth. The defense could be horrible. I mean, we know the upper part of that lineup is going to be pretty good, but let's say there's just not as much production as we want from 6 through 9 in that lineup. Like, it's going to hurt a little bit. And for that, it's 87-75. Again, not a bad record. I think that put him in my postseason. One, two, three. I think it gets them into in the postseason. I think I have a very similar postseason format to last year. It's just I think the Phillies, they improved, but I feel like they're covering holes right now, and missing Harper is going to hurt a lot. I had Trey
That's
Turner as my MVP. I had Aaron Nola as my Cy Young. I had Bryson Stott as my breakout. But I actually put my most important as either Trey Turner or JT Realmuto, because they need someone to step up and be the star of the team. Not that those guys aren't, but while Harper's gone, they need to be the MVP player. And while Harper's gone, they are the most important to keeping this team going and having a shot at the postseason. And so lastly, ceiling, floor, and volatility. I'd like to kick off with volatility of very high. I think this team could be pretty good, like a couple wins better than you guys. You're 90 and 72, but they could also be borderline a 500 team if things go poorly.
I think on my volatility scale, it's a little bit lower. I think just because, I mean, you have so many guys on this team that they picked up, and they have so many different like difference makers that you need everything to go wrong, and that is unlikely because all these guys are established. This isn't like a young team either. They're a pretty established older team. And I just don't see them dropping off the face of the planet. I see them having the potential to maybe win the East, like in like a everything clicks situation, but that volatility only goes up. I don't think they're gonna fall much lower than they did last year.
For me, I can't put them at like very high because they're not as the volatility is not as high as the Marlins. And that's I think where we had them at. I definitely think there is the opportunity if some injuries happen. Castellanos doesn't see any improvements. Bohm sees no improvements defensively. Brandon Marsh doesn't have that type of step forward offensively. Schwarber regresses. Rhys Hoskins is cold for the large majority of the season. I don't see all of those things happening. I think some of them will. So I think it is high, but not like very high.
Medium high.
Medium high.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So for the ceiling, I was feeling like 92, 93 wins. I think there's like, if things go right and this team plays to what they can be, it's a very good team. I think it's a 93 win team at best. It's just they happen to be playing in the National League East.
Yeah, it's
tough.
a very I think it's a high ceiling, and I don't, for the floor you said like 500. I don't think 500. I think they're like probably around the Marlins ceiling at like 85 wins.
Tom, how do you feel
So
about that?
I mean, so I think their ceiling is right about 95 wins. Um, Obviously that's if everything goes right, and also everything goes wrong for the other teams in the East because they're also going to be competing against those other teams. I find it highly unlikely that three teams in the NL East win 95 plus games. So obviously, if one's going to succeed, the rest are going to falter.
Bailey?
So, huh?
Bailey?
Bailey falter. Yep, this is a reference. No, I don't know. This is such a tough division to play in. And if they were in like say AL Central or like any other Central, actually the NL the mid, they would have a much better record. But I just in this division, it's so tough to win. And I think 93 and 95 has to be their absolute peak. Sorry.
Um, I think that's fair. I'm looking at their record over the past couple of seasons. In 2019, they went 81 and 81. In 2021, they went 82 and 80. And then this year they went 87 and 65 or 87 and 75. I think I kind of agree with the 93, 92 win ceiling. It's just I feel like there's a floor, and we've seen the floor. Maybe it's a couple wins better than 82 wins, like 83, 84, but I'd say that's the highest I'd put the low.
That
I
makes
think
sense. Yep.
that's fair.
Yeah, that's the I'll put the low. Yeah, okay. English good. 83 and 79. Okay, good. All right. So that wraps up our Phillies projection, and we're gonna hop into the other team